Hello, everyone. I'm Lisa Twilley. I'm the director of the Women's Business Center here at Maryland Capital Enterprises. Thank you all for joining us today on this beautiful day before the rain comes. Just to give you a little information about us and what we do, we are a nonprofit based here in Salisbury, and we assist entrepreneurs that are getting started in business or if they're already in business and trying to expand. We do business consulting, marketing consulting, training workshops such as this. All of our services are free. We also do micro and small business loans. So if you need any of our services, please feel free to reach out. I'll put my contact information in the chat. And we have a couple more people joining us today from MCE, so they'll put their information in as well. And we have Jim Peterson today joining us from M&T Bank. And he is going to tell you a little bit more about himself and get started.
Well, thank you. Happy to be here. Good afternoon, everybody. I am Jim Peterson. I am the Vice President of Community Banking and Small Business Ambassador for M&T Bank. And today we're going to be talking about turning your hobby into a side hustle. I hope that we're going to make this interactive. I hate to just be sitting here talking to you for an hour. So if you have any questions, please feel free to stop me at any time and say, hey, Jim, what did you mean by that? Or Jim, can you help me with this? Or Jim, I didn't understand that. Happy to explain that to you. We have a lot of information to get into 1 hour. So I may talk a little quickly because I usually run out of time and end up getting the hook. But I'm going to try to get all the information out there. I'm happy to share this presentation with you afterwards, although it's not a whole lot of slides, but it's more notes than anything. So, I'm not going to dazzle you, as I always say with my slides. They are not that fancy. There's not going to be a lot of music or things popping in and out, but what you're going to hear is a lot of good information for you if you're considering turning your hobby into a side hustle. All right. So I hope you're ready. And if it's okay with our host, are we ready to get started?
Yes, we are. Take it away.
All right. Again, thank you for being here. I am going to share my screen so we can get started. All right. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes. You want to make it bigger?
I'm trying to.
There you go.
There, how's that?
That's great.
All right, so it's asking me to turn on subtitles. I don't know if we need subtitles, but here we go. So turning my hobby into a side hustle. Again, this is Jim Peterson, M&T Bank. And what we're going to do today, here's our agenda. I'm going to discuss some definitions. I'm going to talk about what is a hobby and what is a side hustle. And we'll talk about the differences between the two. Then we're going to talk about why you want to turn your hobby into a side hustle. Excuse me, I got a little bit of a nasal thing going on. I hope you can still hear me, at least by the end of this. So we're going to talk about why you want to turn your hobby into a side hustle, how to turn your hobby into a side hustle. Then we're going to discuss when to turn your hobby into a side hustle. And then if you have any questions at that point, I'm happy to take any questions. And if we can get done in enough time, we might even have a test. Right? I love tests. If you've been to any of my workshops, I like to have some tests because that's how we learn. Right? That's the teacher in me. So we'll begin with definitions. Hobby and side hustle. Right? So a hobby, we'll get into what a hobby is. A hobby is an activity done regularly in one's leisure time for pleasure, right? So we all think we know what a hobby is. Again, something you're going to do on your own time, something that you do just for fun. But sometimes we end up with a hobby that would. I'm sorry, I got to move some things around here. We end up with a hobby that other people actually like and enjoy. And we might have the opportunity to actually make some money off of these hobbies. So, there's also a definition by the IRS whereas the IRS has its own term for hobby, and that is it's an activity that a person pursues because they enjoy it and with no intention of making a profit, right? So you got to be careful when you start making a profit off of your hobby, then it can become a whole different thing. And you got to be concerned because there's certain minimums and criteria. So typically in a hobby, it's for personal motives, and it's for enjoyment or relaxation, right? The IRS wants to know that you're making enough income from other sources to fund the activity, right? It may or may not be consistent profit, right? You might make some money from it. You might not make some money from it. And the earnings you're not dependent on the earnings for your daily living expenses. All right, so whatever your hobby is, if you like baking cakes and every now and then somebody buys these cakes from you, that's a hobby. You're not dependent on them for your living expenses. Maybe some extra stuff. Maybe you earn enough money to buy some clothes or some shoes or take a trip every now and then, but you're not dependent on it for your living expenses. And if you make less than $600 a year, okay, that's how the IRS views a hobby. You might have a different definition, but that's how the IRS sees it. So that's a hobby. Then we have a side hustle, right? So a side hustle is any type of employment done in addition to one's full-time job. So you can make money from it, but typically you would have a full-time job or 9 to 5 or regular, what we call regular job. All right, so the IRS definition is any activity carried on for the production of income from selling goods or performing services. All right, so, and again, that threshold is $600. Anything over $600, you have to claim as earned income on your taxes. Now, a side hustle is not necessarily a business, right? It can be less than, it can be more than $600 and you got to claim it, but you haven't incorporated this business and it's not formal. You haven't registered with the state. So you're operating as a sole proprietor. So it can be a business, but again, what makes it a side hustle, at least in the eyes of the IRS, is that you have a full-time job. Your efforts or your income your efforts and your income is not consistent, right? You might do it this week, you might not do it this week. You might do it during the summer, but you don't do it during the winter. You might do it, on holidays. You make certain things for the holidays, and you do bazaars and flea markets, et cetera. It's not consistent. And you don't continually try to make the entity more profitable. Again, that's one of the keys that the IRS looks for with a side hustle. Are you investing in this business, this side hustle, and continually trying to make it more and more profitable, right? Because that's what you do with a business. And we're going to have another session in October. I'm sorry, actually next week. Next week, we're going to have a session called Turning Your Side Hustle into a Business. Again, there's a difference, and we'll explain what that difference is. And it mainly it comes based on the IRS's definition, right? So you're not continually doing this and trying to make it better and more profitable, because that's what you do with a business. And if that's what you're doing, then you may have a business and not a side hustle. So also what the IRS looks at is if this is or isn't something that you've done in the past to make a living at. Okay, so if you used to be the head pastry chef for a restaurant, and now you have another job, but you're baking on the side, and you're constantly, you got a place to work out of, and you're hiring more people, and you're trying to find ways to make it more profitable, but you're calling it a side hustle. The IRS is going to call that a business, right? It's something that you're skilled at, you've done it before, you're improving it, you're continually improving it, and you're doing it consistently. The IRS is going to call that a business. And the difference between the two is that you not only have to pay taxes on your earned income, but now you got to get registered and you got to file taxes for the business. You have to file taxes for what's earned. You have to file taxes. You have to pay your fee to be registered in the state. You have to file taxes for the business, which could be one and the same if it's flowed through your sole prop or an LLC or S corp, right? We'll talk about that when we get to the business side in the next session. But also you have to pay self-employment tax, right? There's a tax in our country that when you run your own business and work for yourself, even if you have another job, you still have to pay self-employment tax. So let's look at some of the most popular side hustles. The most popular side hustles are here, according to Side Hustle Nation, are online businesses, freelance consulting, e-commerce, investing, self-publishing, local services, YouTube, software or apps, and the gig economy. All right, so I'm guessing that your businesses would fall somewhere in these categories. So is there anybody on the line that business does not fall into one of these categories? All right, I'm going to take that as a no. So more than likely, your business is going to fall into one of these categories. And can anybody tell me who they think the most profitable of these categories are? Which one of these makes the most profit? All right, again, no answer.
I know, I don't want to answer.
You think you know?
Somebody put gig in the chat.
I'm sorry, somebody put what?
Gig economy.
Gig?
Somebody put that in the chat.
Okay. Yeah, I can't see the chat, so can you help me with that? Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, not gig, not gig. In fact, the number one most profitable side hustle is investing. Believe it or not, investing is number one. Number two is something that I certainly would have picked, and I doubted many people would have picked it, is YouTube. People are making a lot of money on YouTube. I wouldn't have known that until I did the research on this. I certainly would not have picked that. So investing, I would have picked investing, but YouTube was a big surprise for me. YouTube is number two, and then software being number three. So the least profitable out of all of these is the gig economy. All right, there's a lot of people doing it, but they're not making a whole lot of profit from it. There's a bunch of money being made, but not a lot of profit. All right, so the gig economy, again, another surprise. You would think that it's profitable. It's not very profitable. Profitable, like when you look at Uber and Lyft, the people making all the money is Uber and Lyft, right? When it comes to profit. And even they're not very profitable if you get down to actual profit. They got a lot of cash flow, but not so much profit. So that's where side hustles come in. So let's talk about why you want to turn your hobby into a side hustle. And this is what you have to consider. Do you love it? Right? Do you love it? Running a side hustle is hard. Like we just talked about, it's a business. You must really love doing this, or you won't continue to do it. With your hobby, you can do it whenever you want. When it's a side hustle and you're providing a service or a product to somebody, you got to do it when they need it. Right? You said you're going to have it. You got to be able to provide it. So, was there a question? Okay, so we'll move on. Number two, do other people love it? Right? Just because you love it doesn't mean other people love it. And I don't mean just your family or your spouse or your sister or brother. Right? You need for a lot of other people to love it. So often I get somebody that comes to me and says, you know what, my husband loves my cooking. I want to open up a restaurant. No, that's not good enough. Right? good for you that your husband or your family and your friends love what you're doing, but you need other people to love. You need a lot of other people to love it. We used to work when I worked for the city. We were in the Eastern Building over in East Baltimore, and there's this woman who made these cakes. And she would come around and give everybody a piece of cake, and everybody loved her cake. We looked forward to holidays when she made these cakes. Right, cake was delicious. So then she decided, all right, everybody loves my cakes. I'm gonna go into business selling cakes. So she started a business. You know, everybody supported her. Yeah, you should start this business. You make the best cakes. So she started making cakes and started selling them, and nobody will buy it. Right? Once it came down to figuring it out, and we're going to get into the cost plus model in a minute, but once you figure out how much it costs you to make that cake and the time it takes for you to make that cake, and how much you have to charge for that cake, nobody liked her cakes that much, right? Yeah, her cakes were great when they were free. And as long as she gave them to people, people would eat them and people would enjoy them. But they weren't good enough to pay what she needed in order to support her business. So you want to make sure that you do that research and make sure people love what you're providing enough to pay you enough to make sure you have a sustainable business. All right. And in order to do that, you want to do some surveys. You might want to do a survey on Facebook or IG. Might want to hire a survey service. There's sites on the internet that'll help you do surveys, SurveyMonkey, Constant Contact, places like that. We want to make sure that there's going to be enough people to support you and your business before you turn this hobby of yours into a side hustle, because you may not have enough folks that are willing to pay you what you need to keep that going. And then number 3 is what you need readily available consistently. Right. So if you're doing something every now and then, you might be able to get what you need, excuse me, every now and then. There was a gentleman, young man, a few years ago, who was selling alpaca scarves from Peru. So his family was from Peru. He would fly back there once or twice a year, grab some of the sheep's wool, alpaca wool, or whatever that is that he needed, had some locals make these scarves, come back and sell them. Right? And he was selling them for good money too. I mean, these weren't, the everyday scarves. He was selling them for good money. But then COVID hits, right? He can't get to Peru. And if he could get there, these places all shut down because of the pandemic. And now those materials he doesn't have, they're not available. Right? He can't get there. They're not working the way they used to work. These aren't available. So you want to make sure before you create the demand that because there's a bunch of people waiting for him to come back with these cars, right? And now he has to disappoint all these folks, and they got to go elsewhere. So before you create that demand, you want to make sure that what you need is available and on a consistent basis, right? And a lot of people found this out over the pandemic. They're getting things from overseas, and their products are now more difficult to get if they're getting them at all right now. And the supply chain is a lot more expensive. Things have doubled and tripled in price. And they take 2 and 3 times as long to get here, and they could be stuck on the dock or stuck in a container out in the water and things like that. So again, before you start promising things to folks, you want to make sure that your materials are readily available. And also, number 4, would you do it for someone else, right? Doing it for you is one thing, but doing it for somebody else and possibly in a different way is a whole nother thing, right? So you love making these cakes and you love making your cakes your way, but when you turn it into a side hustle and say, hey, I'm offering to make cakes for people, you might find a restaurant or a diner or somebody wants your cakes and they say, well, listen, I like that carrot cake, but we don't want sour cream on the outside. We want chocolate, and it doesn't mean much to me because I'm not a baker, but I've seen people get offended when somebody says something like that. to them, right? Chocolate on a carrot cake, it's just not done that way, right? But if your customer says that's how they want it, then that's how they want it, right? And you can't get your feelings hurt because they're paying for it. But when it's your hobby or when it's your thing, you can do it any way you want. When you're doing it for somebody else, you might need to do it in a different way, and you can't get your feelings hurt just because somebody wants it done differently. So you have to be sure that you're comfortable enough. And there's a lot of people who aren't, right? There's a lot of tailors and seamsters who say, no, you don't make suits that way, right? No, you can't do it that way. Some people are fixed in the way that they do certain things. And when you're turning your hobby into a side hustle, making money, you have to be able to be a little bit more flexible. So number 5, can you make a profit? Right. So here's where the cost plus pricing model comes in. You have to be able to make a profit. So many people are doing what they love and they're selling these items and they're making money, right? They're not giving them away. They're making money, but they're not necessarily making a profit. The number one thing that a lot of people who are turning their hobby into a side hustle do is they don't value their own time enough. They say, well, I bought these materials for $1 and I put them in a box. It costs 50 cents. So my cost is 50 cents and I'm going to sell them my cost is $1.50 and I'm going to sell them for $3, right? And it sounds good until you understand that those materials that they bought for $1, it took them 3 or 4 hours to make whatever it is that they're selling out of those materials. All right, you got to put this together, you got to put that together. If you're baking, you got to put it in the oven. That's energy and time, and you can't put icing on it till in the morning, and or you're going to put these together and let that dry, and then you got to come back later. And whatever it is that you're doing, there's time involved. There's a value to that time. Your time is very valuable. I tell a story about a woman who makes these custom baskets at holiday time. And she spends all year putting these baskets together. And she may travel to Jersey to get some things and travel to, down south, get some things. And then at the end of the day, she's got these beautiful baskets, these beautiful holiday baskets. And she'll add up when it comes time for her to do her bazaars at Christmas time and the places where she sells these things. She'll add up what's in the basket and she'll double it, right? And she thinks she's making money. Right, but when you think about all the hours and the traveling and the gas and the time and everything she has to do to get these items to put in this basket, she's losing money on every basket, a lot of money on every basket. And again, if it's a hobby like it is for her, it's not such a big deal. When you look at these baskets, you can tell that this is a labor of love for her, right? There is no way that she's ever going to make a true profit on these baskets, because I don't care what she charges, it's not enough. These things are beautiful. And you can tell that there's a whole lot of time and effort and skill put into these things. So she's never going to make, the kind of money that she should be making to have a sustainable business like this, but it's her hobby. Actually, it's her side hustle. She makes money only at Christmas time. It's not consistent. She's not dependent on it. So she's not going to have any issues with the IRS calling it a side hustle. But she does have to claim that the money that she makes as earned income, right? Don't forget that. You still, whether it's a hobby or a side hustle, if you're making money, you got to claim that as earned income if it's over $600. So don't forget that. So one of the things I wanted to share with you, I mentioned it a couple of times now, is the cost plus pricing. So here's an example of cost plus pricing for a soap company to make a bar of soap, right? So the ingredients to make that bar of soap would be 50 cents. The labor cost would be $1, right? So this person is including the labor for them to take these materials, put it into a mold, let it cool, do whatever you got to do. to take it out of the mold. And then so manufacturing costs. What I'm not seeing here is maybe packaging, right? Maybe that's in the manufacturing cost, but there could be some packaging in there. I would suggest you throw your advertising cost in there, right? So whether you're advertising on Facebook or IG, or if you're going to different flea markets or bazaars, or however you're selling these things, right? There's cost involved. You gotta pay to be in these things. You gotta rent your table or whatever that is. Those costs should be in there too. But this is a simple example, right? So you got your material cost, your labor, your manufacturing cost. Your total cost would be $2. And if you wanted to have a 200% markup, you're going to double that. So your profit margin would be $4, and then your selling price would be $6. Right? So in your industry and whatever you're selling, your services or your product, you're going to look that up and see what the typical profit margin is, and you want to try to at least meet that or beat that. And depending on your competition, you want to either go up or down with that. But that's your typical cost plus pricing example. So I'm going to stop here for a second to see if there's any questions in the chat, or any questions that you have for me on anything so far. Before we get into how to turn your hobby into a side hustle.
Feel free to unmute yourself. I don't see anything in the chat, but you can unmute if you want to ask a question.
All right, so we're going to move on to how to turn your hobby into a business. So first, you want to create a business plan. And business plans are key. I mean, it's the key to everything. You want to make sure that you have this plan, because this is going to be your roadmap. And you're going to have a lot of things coming your different way. People are going to tell you, oh, you ought to do this, you ought to do that. If you're making soap, oh, you should do this kind of soap, you should do that kind of soap. You should turn this into skincare. Why just do soap? People are going to be coming at you from all over the place with a lot of different things. And you want to have this plan so you can stay on track. All right, it doesn't have to be the biggest, greatest plan ever. The thing that we hate most, as someone who reads business plans all the time, are 50-page business plans, right? Because we don't have time to just sit here and read 50-page business plans. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that the most important part of your business plan is your executive summary. Everything I need to know needs to be in that first page, that first executive summary. Excuse me. Needs to tell me everything I need to know. So you do need a plan. Another thing that I would suggest when you're just getting started is a business model canvas. Now, this is the session that we're going to do in October. So same time, same channel, Women Business Center. We're going to be doing a session called Business Model Canvas in October. So this is a quick one-page plan. There's 9 boxes on this page. If you've never seen a business model canvas, it's a page with 9 boxes on it, and the 9 boxes are key partners, key activities, cost structure, key resources, your value proposition, customer relationships, channels, customer segments, and revenue streams. Right? These are all the things that make up your business. And you can share that with anyone, and they'll be able to see exactly how your business runs. All right, they see exactly what you do, how you get your materials, what you do with them after you get them, how you're selling them, who your customers are, how you're making money, right? What you're doing with that money. Everything you need is right there on those 9 boxes. So please look forward to that workshop coming up. It's going to be a good one. More and more, a lot of people are using this. Folks out in Silicon Valley started it. I think Microsoft started it. So it's a really good tool, and we'll get into it again later on. So number 2. So number 1, you got to have a plan. Number 2, is there a market? Again, does anybody want to buy what you're making? Does anybody want the services that you're providing? Will they pay enough for it to allow you to have a sustainable business? All right. So I always tell a story about a guy. There's a gentleman in Baltimore that I met several years ago, and he's an inventor. And he's got all kinds of, he's got over 20 patents, and he's got all kinds of fancy gadgets and things like that. And you know, I talk with him from time to time, and he's always pitching something new to me. The problem is that he creates these solutions that don't have a problem. I mean, they're great novelty things, but nobody really wants what he has. When you look at him, it's like, yeah, that's cool, but nobody really needs this, right? So you want to make sure that there's a market for what you're doing. Are you businesses in general are designed to solve a problem. So if you have a side hustle, again, if you want to be consistent with it, it should solve some kind of problem, all right, or at least have a market, people willing to buy it and pay for it. All right, so you want to not only do that, but also what is the size of the market? Right, we call that TAM, total addressable market. So you want to know that there is a market, and then what is the size of that market. So number 3 is who is the competition, right? There's always competition. I don't know how many times I've heard people say, oh, I don't have any competition. Yeah, there's always competition. You need to know who that is. Almost everything in the world these days, I don't care what you're selling, Amazon is your competition because Amazon sells everything. All right, if you sell houses, Amazon sells houses now. Right? If you're selling motorcycles, Amazon sells motorcycles. All right, so almost anything that you're doing, Amazon is going to be your competition. So you need to know exactly how they're selling it, who their customers are, how they target them, et cetera, et cetera. You need to know your competition because one day you may need, and what we've seen in this pandemic is that, you know, it became really difficult. People were not doing what they used to do, and businesses had to decide how they want to find new customers. Right. So if you knew your competition and you knew your competition was still managing through the pandemic, you had to know how they're doing that. Right. And if you knew them before the pandemic, you would know how they're doing it. And you can just pivot a bit and do what you need to do to reach those same folks. So you need to know how much money they're making, how they're doing what they're doing, what their customers are, who their customers are, and would they fit what you're providing, right? Because there may come a time when you need to go after them. We've seen it, you know, we've seen it during the pandemic. So number 4, do you have the time? Right? Do you really have the time to dedicate to turning your hobby into a side hustle? Right? Because it takes a lot of time. We've talked about some things, we're only halfway through. We've talked about a lot of things that you have to do to make this a sustainable side hustle. All right, and you're doing this outside, or most of you are doing this outside of your day job, your 9 to 5. So do you have enough time after work? Do you have enough time on weekends to be able to do this, to dedicate to this, to make your side hustle successful? Number 5, who is your target customer? We talked about this under your competition. You want to know who their target customer is because it might be yours. All right, so you really need to spend some time on identifying who your target customer is. What's their age, where they live, how they live, where and how they shop, right? What's their education? Are they employed? Where are they employed? What do they like? What do they dislike? What's their social circle? Excuse me, what's their social circle? Right? Because that's how you target them. If you know that they're on their IG folks, right? You can hit them on IG. That you can then advertise on IG. All right, they're not IG people, but they're LinkedIn people. Then maybe you want to target them through LinkedIn, right? So you need to know them so you know how to approach them. Number 6 is how are you going to reach them? Again, I just talked about the tools, LinkedIn, IG, Facebook. Do they still read newspapers, right? If you have an older demographic, you might need to send them a postcard, right? Because they're not going to find you on IG and Facebook and Twitter. You got to send them a postcard. So you need to know how will you reach your customer, right? And you only do that if you can identify them. And that's going to help you determine what we call CAC, customer acquisition costs, right? CAC. So until you know who they are and how you can reach them, you can't determine your customer acquisition costs, which is key. That's another one of those items that could have been in your cost plus model, right? That I showed you, that sample that I showed you. It could be material, could be labor, could be manufacturing costs, it could be advertising, right? And it could be customer acquisition costs. You know, how much is it going to charge you? How much is it going to cost you to do some advertising to reach these folks, right? So that's number 6. Number 7 is create a budget, because you need to know exactly, again, customer acquisition costs, all those other items. How much is it going to cost you to create this hustle, this side hustle of yours, whether you need a place to work, or you just need to go out and buy a table or a computer, you know, whatever kind of advertising you're going to do, all that stuff, you need a budget. Your business plan should include that budget for how much it's going to cost and projections, right? How much money are you going to make next month? How much money are you going to make in 6 months? How much money are you going to make next year? How much money are you going to make in 3 years? So that's the how. Once you get through all that, that's your how. Any questions up to this point?
Yes, Jim, we do have a question.
Yes.
I answered a couple that were in the chat. Kamalia, do you want to unmute and ask? I know you're not shy.
Well, thank you, Lisa. I wasn't expecting you to say that.
Nothing like being called out, right?
I
Put on
know, I was
blast.
not
Let's go.
expecting that. All right. So first of all, thank you guys for having this. I was actually away when you asked if there were any questions for the first part, so now I just typed it. But if you're aiming to start a business and you're not necessarily selling, you know, concrete materials like maybe like lotions or cosmetics or anything like that, but you're trying to go the route of, you know, doing a graphic design or providing a website content creation, how would you best go about planning out the labor and the time and, you know, with the different apps that that individual or that client would use to figure out how you can make a profit versus making money?
Yeah, so very good question. Thank you. Is it Kamalia?
It's Kamalia, but you know what? It's okay. It rhymes with Somalia if it helps any, but I'm okay with
That does.
whatever.
No, it is what it is. Don't accept anything less. It's Kamalia.
That's fair.
So thank you for that. Yeah, so what you want to do is you want to see what all the graphic designers or what the going rate is for graphic designers, right? So you want to do some research on what people are paying graphic designers per hour. You want to see what the salaries are for graphic designers, and you want to put yourself in that same range. So you want to make sure if it's taking you 4 or 5 hours that you're getting 4 or 5 hours of adequate pay for that work. So the dollar amount is going to come from what other people are paying. Again, and this can vary. What they're paying in California is going to be a little different than what they're paying in Maryland. But depending on where you're operating, you want to get the average of what people are paying these graphic designers in your area. Did I cover that, or am I still missing something?
No, that's good. You've given me a good start, because I think the other thing I have to think about is, you know, people pay for, I think, the brands or the people that they know that they've been in the game for a while, and I may not have my name as established. So do I make a different charge based off being a newbie in the field? Well, not necessarily like new completely, but new as in launching a business versus someone who's done it for a while and they have the rapport. So
yeah, so again, very good. And I'm glad you asked this, because I go through this a lot with folks because I work with a lot of startups. So you want to price yourself exactly where the big guys are, right? The well-known people are, because you don't want anybody to think that you're offering anything less than what they're offering, right? But at the same time, you can offer discounts to get the business, right? If they're charging $120 an hour to do a project, You want to charge $120 an hour to do a project as well. But then you can come back and say on your proposal, or if you want to have a telephone conversation, you can say, hey, listen, I realize that I'm kind of new to this game, or you don't really know me. We don't have that relationship yet. I'll give you a 30% discount on this project. Right? So you're free to discount, but you want to make it very clear that your services that you're offering are just as good as the other guys. So whether you're providing a service or you're providing a product, you always want to make it very clear that what you're offering is just as good or better. I like to price mine better than the best guy, because there's folks out there that certainly can afford it. So you're going to get those folks who say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and give her a shot. I'm going to pay a little more and see what happens. But then you're going to have those people who say, well, I don't really know you, and you guys haven't been doing this that long. That's when you have the opportunity to say, hey, I used to work for these guys. I know how they do what they do. I can do it better, right? Or we're just as good as them. We're better than them. So what I'm going to do is, for this one project, this first project, I'm going to give you a 30% discount. And then we can talk about it later, and we can have that conversation on your next project. How's that sound?
That gives me a better a better approach and a better idea. I appreciate that, because I wasn't thinking along those lines at all.
Yeah, never discount what you're offering, whether it's a product or service. Never discount it initially, right? You want it very clear when you provide, even when you do stuff for free. And I need everybody to hear this, right? Because when we start new businesses, a lot of people want you to do things for free. Hey, I'll give you some publicity if you do this for free. Send them a bill. Send them a bill. Say, hey, listen, your cost for me doing this is $600. But I'm giving you a $600 discount. So the amount owed is $0. But you're getting a $600 value. Right? Don't just say, I'll do this for free and don't worry about it, right? Always attach a value to what you're providing, because what you're providing has a cost. It's valuable. We just went through, how much things cost, right? You got materials, you got time, you got to travel, you got gas, all these things cost. Then nothing is free. So you need to let people know that you're not providing something for free. You're doing it for free to them. It's not free, it's just free to you this time. Does that make sense?
That's right, Jim. That's
Thank
good
you.
advice.
All right, so how am I doing on time? All right, I got a little bit of time. All right, so here we go. We're gonna talk about when to turn your hobby into a side hustle. All right, so after you plan your launch, you gotta plan your launch first. So you gotta make sure everything's in place. You gotta have your website ready, you gotta have your social media ready. You gotta decide what the best platforms for you are. And I would suggest you hit every single one of them. I don't know how many times that I've gone to people, because I spend a lot of time, on social media. Spend a lot of time on social media because that's my business, right? And most of my business is promoting your business. So I'm on social media and people say to me, hey, Jim, you know anybody that does this or that? And I'll say, yeah, here they go. Here's the companies that do this in our area. And so many times I run into people who say, well, I'm not on Twitter, right? I'm trying to find a company, and somebody on Twitter reached out to me and I'm trying to shout them out, and they're not on Twitter. And I'm like, man, how can you not be on Twitter, right? Or I'm on Facebook. I'm like, somebody on Facebook said, hey, Jim, you know anybody in Baltimore area that does that? Just a couple of weeks ago, somebody hit me on Twitter. This was Twitter, needing a media company. And I was like, yeah, I know a couple, and I was trying to find this one particular company, and they weren't on Twitter. And I reached out to them. I was like, yo, I'm trying to get you some business here. Oh, I don't mess with Twitter like that. This is business, right? Whether you want to be on Twitter or Facebook, a lot of people think Facebook is for old people, right? Whether you like the platform or not is irrelevant, right? You should be there. If you want to do business, you should be in all of these places. So get your platforms together, get your social media together, plan your launch, right? Let everybody know it's coming. You might even need to do some print, right? A lot of people think print is dead. Print is not dead. Postcards and things like that are still very relevant and actually making a comeback since the pandemic. Number two, educate yourself, right? Like you're doing today, take some classes. Women's business centers are a great place to educate yourself. Get some classes under your belt. Make sure you understand the industry that you're going into. This is now different from a hobby. Doesn't matter what is your hobby, whether you make money or not. If you're trying to make money, you need to understand how these things operate. So take some classes at the Women's Business Center, get some information from the SBA, the SBDC, SBRC, all these places that offer free education. Take advantage of all of them. Find yourself a SCORE mentor, all free. All these things you can do for free. So make sure you take advantage of that. Go on YouTube, watch some videos, all free, right? You don't have to pay for any of this. And you want to make sure that you're doing all the best practices for the folks in your industry. What you need to also learn in terms of educating yourself is, do you need a license for what you're doing? All right, some of the things that some of you folks are doing, you need a license to do that. So you want to make sure you're licensed. You don't want to get yourself in trouble. We talked about the issues you could have with the IRS, but you can also have some issues with the law, right? If you're not licensed, you're trying to do some contracting, you're gonna be working in people's homes. You need an MHIC license, right? You need a Maryland Home Improvement license. You can't just go in somebody's house and tear out their kitchen and start building stuff, right? You need a license for that. Some folks want to sell snow cones on the sidewalk. You need a license for that. It's called a sidewalk permit, right? You need a permit to sell stuff on the sidewalk. So again, educate yourself, know what you need. Do you need a trader's license? In the city of Baltimore, you need a trader's license to sell almost anything because they want you to pay taxes on it. So even if you're at, an event or the flea market or the farmer's market, you need to be able to track that, which means you need a license, whether it's temporary or permanent. You have to get a license to track those taxes, those sales taxes. So again, educate yourself. Number three, learn how to sell. All right, we call that pitching. You've got to learn how to pitch. Every program that I do, I have a pitch competition at the end. If you haven't heard of 0 to 100, I do a 0 to 100 in a lot of different counties. You might want to be a part of it. 10-week program. At the end, you pitch, you can win some money. We just gave $25,000 away in Howard County a couple of weeks ago at our pitch graduation. There's a bunch of pitch competitions. That's free money just by pitching, but you got to learn how to pitch. You got to learn how to pitch you. You got to learn how to pitch your business. All right, there's some great folks around town who help you do that. A young lady that helps me out with my programs is Takia Ross. She's the queen of pitching. We just did an event a few days ago for Kiva as well. She was the pitch coach for them. A few young ladies won some money for their businesses. Again, so you got to learn how to sell. Pitch you, pitch your business. You got to learn how to sell. There's a lot of ways, again, to do that. SCORE can help you. Maryland Capital Enterprise and the Women's Business Center, they'll help you. They have programs. So again, learn how to sell. And finally, pick a date, right? Pick a date, pick a launch date, and make sure that you let everybody know that your business is coming ahead of time, right? 3, 4, 5 months ahead of time. Hey, I'm starting on this day. Get people ready. Let them know how to buy from you, right? Get them connected to all of your outlets, all your social media, all the ways to get in touch with you. Hey, I'm coming. I'm 30 days away. Hey, I'm 14 days away. We're going to be launching tomorrow. Get everybody ready. Let them know when your launch is coming. Have that date ready, and then launch. All right, and that's it. And I think I beat the time. I'm not going to get kicked off of here. And in fact, we might even have time for a test. What do you think? The first, I'm going to ask you if you have any questions. If there are no questions, we can get to the test.
There was one question we missed earlier, unless it was answered. Selena was wondering when you were talking about the 9 things. I think it was in the second part when you mentioned 9 things. She said, "What were the 9 things?"
So we want to know what the 9 things were. the 9 boxes for the
Sorry, I missed that one earlier.
business model canvas. So the 9 parts of the business model canvas are key partners, key activities, key resources, cost structure, value proposition, customer relationships, channels, customer segments, and revenue streams.
All right.
All right, we got all those.
Any other questions?
And again, we're going to be doing a workshop on that. Did I jump out of here too soon? We're going to be doing a workshop on that in October,
October 12th.
October 12th. All right, so don't miss it. And I'll be able to explain what all of those mean. You can always Google it. All right, so we're going to move on to our test. We got a couple minutes left. We're going to move on to our test. Our test is, I need to know one thing that you learned today that you did not know before you came to this workshop. And you can't repeat what somebody else says. I know some of you at work or doing some other things, but I need you to either hop on real quick and come off mute and say the one thing that you learned today that you didn't know before you got here, or put it in a chat or something. I want to make sure that I'm being effective here. So I need you to help me out. I need to know the one thing that you learned today that you didn't know before you got here.
Someone put in how to price your services.
All right, how to price your services, cool.
Jamie put that in. Lisa put what qualifies as a side hustle.
Okay, according to the IRS.
Kamalia, profit versus making money on services related to graphic design and website content creation, as well as how to best measure myself compared to my competition.
Okay, all right, Kamalia.
Yeah, and then Janae, the true definitions of hobby.
Okay, okay.
These are all good. You did good, Jim.
These are excellent. These are excellent. Great, great. Thank you, ladies. I'm glad you had some time to spend with us today.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank everybody for joining us today. And like Jim said, if you want the second part of the series, it is next week, June 9th. And we actually had to move the time. It's from 5 to 6. So we're doing it in the evening next week. So hopefully everybody can join us, and the ones that already registered, we've sent the new date and time, our new time out to them as well. So I put our website in the chat. Be sure to check there for more classes that are coming up.
Absolutely. And thank you for your time today. And I'll see you next week. Bring a friend.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good day.